as well along with these two sessions. So before moving on, we'll start the proceedings with our institute motto song. You need not stand. As a matter of respect, you just place your hand on your heart. Yeah, please go ahead with our institute motto songs.
येष सुप्तेषु जागृति येष सुप्तेषु जागृति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तदेव शुक्रदब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता.
Thank you. So I request Chairperson of Vijayawada branch, Gaddam Sharita Sharin Madam, to provide her opening remarks.
With today's resource persons, C.A.B. Ramakrishnan and colleagues at Managing Committee and other fellow members, a very good evening to all. My hearty welcome to you all for the VCM on Faceless Appeals, Practical Issues and Faceless Appeals. Yesterday, we really had a wonderful session on faceless assessment by Ramakrishnan sir. And his explanation is in very clear-cut and easy understandable way and clarified so many queries raised by our members. And today's topic is Faceless Appeals Scheme. It was introduced by CBDT on September 25th, 2020 with the intention of introducing greater openness in the appeal process. The whole scheme was implemented with the intention of eliminating human intervention between the taxpayer and first appellate authority. The CBDT has implemented a new appeal scheme named Faceless Appeal Scheme 2021 on December 20th, 2021. In order to correct the problems and include the adjustments required by the taxpayers. And the whole scheme was replaced by the new scheme. Our today's speaker, B. Ramakrishnan sir, will throw light on advantages of the scheme and procedural aspects and practical issues which our members are facing during the search process. Kindly make note of this, make use of this today's session. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Thank you for your opening remarks. Sir Ramakrishnan sir, yeah, please carry on, sir. It's up to you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, friends. It's indeed a privilege to address you continuously on a second day. Today's topic on faceless appeals is again the Government of India's schemes for better taxpayer services to remove the interface and all difficulties faced in the regular physical appearances of appeals. So to start with, I would just give you an overview that the scheme, what all are the appealable orders and how the faceless scheme is devised. All of you would have seen the physical appeals which are listed in section 246A, whatever the appealable orders are. And some of these, though not specifically covered in case of a penalty, there is a residual clause under 246A which says any penalty that has been levied under chapter 21. So which is because some of the penalties, there are difficulties, some penalties for the annual information reports like 285 BA, all these are levied by the commissioner in charge of the I&CI. So those penalties wherever are levied by commissioner, the normal attitude, other thing, approach for chartered accountants is it should go to the tribunal. Unlike that, actually these appeals can be filed before the Commissioner of Income Tax Appeals, because even though it is levied by a commissioner, because it would come under the residual clause under 246A. Other list of orders are there in the section 246A. So I'm not going to read out all the sections. Basically, any order of assessment, penalty, and wherever somebody is held as a representative assessee for a non-resident, all these are the orders, or wherever it is a issue arising out of TDS. These are the orders that normally are the classified as the appealable orders before the Commissioner of Income Tax Appeals. So the faceless scheme originally was introduced from 2020, and thereafter, whatever the difficulties were there, where some of them, I would say, were addressed by the new scheme 21. And now there are 3 options generally available for an assessee to choose what course of action that needs to be taken against an order of assessment or penalty. Whether he should file an appeal or file a petition under section 264 or make an application before the dispute resolution committee constituted under section 245 MA of the Act. Because this is a new set of provisions that was introduced by the Finance Act 22, which made this scheme of 245 MA for appeals under the the Finance Act 21 for small appeals. So now the taxpayer has a choice of deciding which course of action he should take depending on the facts and circumstances of each case. If the quantum of addition is less than 10 lakhs and the total returned income is less than 50 lakhs, the application can be made before the dispute resolution committee in terms of section 245 MA, subject to the other eligible conditions, because the entry level is restricted for this 245 MA section on the ground that if a person, that is a taxpayer, has been served a detention under Kafe Posa or has facing prosecution under Binami or PMLA or IPC or this Narcotics Act, all these people are not eligible to come for this, or a person who is searched or surveyed, they are also not eligible to use this scheme of 245 MA, which is intentionally for small assessees and to again reduce the pendency of appeals. Why the appeals have pendency have increased over a period of time is for at least 2 years, the disposals by appeal commissioners after the introduction of the scheme in 2020 and the modifications done in 2021. The disposals by the Commissioner of Income Tax Appeals are not commensurate with the number that has been instituted. So as on date, something around 550,000 appeals are pending in the faceless appeal center, and total number of appeal commissioners are around 300. So each one has got a I will not say equally distributed, because it is again randomly selected. So 1,800 appeals is roughly the appeals that would be required to be disposed by each appeal commissioner, and each appeal need not be very simple. There may be complex issues, simple issues, or even a case where this fees is charged under 234E of this 500 rupees. All those kind of small cases also would be there, or 271(1)B penalty where 10,000 rupees is levied. So all kinds of mixes and combination are pending as on date. And the disposal requirement is about 400 appeals per month for each appeal commissioner. So per annum for each appeal commissioner, which would at least the pendency would be cleared only in another 4 years, roughly, even if they keep up with this disposal. So in order to not to have accumulating the small cases in the faceless appeal scheme, this scheme of dispute resolution committee was introduced. And the dispute resolution committee has the power to reduce or waive penalty, and also they can only consider assessments before them, not issues on penalty. And the main criterion is the addition should not exceed 10 lakhs and the returned income should not exceed 50 lakhs. This is the criterion. So this is one of the choice that is available for an assessee, subject to he be not a person who's either facing or convicted or been detained under Kafiposa or any of those penal acts. So this is this option available. The second option is a petition under 264. A petition under 264 can also be availed for any. Here the difference is 245 MA you can avail only against assessments. 264 you can avail against any order passed by an assessing authority. So this would also include an order of penalty and assessment or fees or cost, whatever fees or any other levy which can go before the principal commissioner. Here the distinction as against a normal appeal is that the order which is impugned, you have time limit to file 1 year as against 30 days in a normal appeal. So this option is for also coming with another condition. You will have to waive your right of appeal if you are filing a 264. And if there is a delay in filing it, if not filed within 1 year, then again you can make an application for condonation, provided there is a reasonable cause made out for the delay, giving the principal commissioner powers. The difficulty in this scheme is that the 264 petitions can be only made by giving up your right of appeal. And by doing that, any order, if the desired result is not availed, if the commissioner rejects the application under petition under 264, the only option is to go before a high court on whether the procedure followed by the principal commissioner is not in accordance with the act, or any legal interpretations have not been properly addressed in the order, or if the order is perverse. So the scope is very, very limited if you go under 264, because you are waiving your right of appeal. For filing a 264, you will have to again pay a fee, and the fee is about 500, irrespective of the quantum of the assessment or the penalty involved, as against the appeal fee, which is slightly higher, where an appeal is made before the appeal committee, CIT appeals. So this is the basic distinction. And the other conditions are that the appeal should not have been filed, and you should give it in writing that you are waiving the right of appeal. So, and it should not be a order which is already subjected to 263. So these are the basic conditions for a 264. And the 264, I would say, it's more like a mercy petition before the commissioner, principal commissioner, because if your petition is not accepted, you have only limited recourse of taking it further in the present structure. As against which case should go before 245 MA or 264 is depending on the facts. Because if you file a petition under 264, the question of pre-deposit of 20% of the disputed demand or 245 MA. So these are not required because they come under a different scheme, and you can file a stay petition along with your application or petition under 264 or 245 MA. However, you file an appeal, even though you make a stay petition, there's a mandatory CBDT circular which initially required 15% of the disputed taxes to be deposited, which was later on enhanced to 20% of the disputed taxes for a stay of the balance 80%. And if you are making out a case for the waiver of the 20% of the disputed taxes not to be made, then the assessing officer with the prior approval of the PCIT only can give a complete stay or a reduction in the 20% of the disputed demand for the appeal. So this basically this is the distinction. One, you can, depending on the facts of the case, the categories of whether to go under 245, actually this should be 245 MA, 245 MA or 264 or 246A, it will be decided on the facts. That is what I would again stress. The advantage of taking it under 264 or 245 MA is the 20% of the disputed demand can be waived by the committee or the principal commissioner if you make a 264. However, the appeal is made, this 20% would be insisted upon. So the list of appealable orders are given from this 200A is a very special section where an assessee denies his liability. This is applicable for TDS cases. And from the 143 once, 143.3, 147 reopened assessments, then orders giving effect to the appellate orders, even then, because it gets merged with the orders of assessment. All these are the appealable orders. Under the faceless scheme, only 3 categories of appeals are excluded, which is a survey case or a search case or a case involving international tax. So these are the cases which normally are not considered and for which still the physical hearing is continued. So the as stated by the chairperson, madam, this faceless scheme, appeal scheme was introduced in 2020 with an intention to eliminate corrupt practices and introduce transparency in the appeal procedure, and also it was modified from time to time. So the CIT appeals, the international tax charge and central charge alone are continuing in physical mode, and all other appeals, pending appeals, got migrated to the Faceless Appeal Center, National Faceless Appeal Center. And this National Faceless Appeal Center, again, the new scheme was notified on 28/12/2021, where some of the shortcomings in the 2020 scheme of granting a personal hearing to the taxpayer was addressed, and now the taxpayer can insist upon a personal hearing in the appellate proceedings, apart from making the return submissions. And this change itself is an outcome of the Chamber of Tax Consultants filing a writ petition on the provisions of the Faceless Appeal Scheme, because the previous scheme of 2020 did not give the right to the taxpayer for the personal hearing. It was only the discretionary power of the commissioner. So that discretion has been removed in the new scheme. So the salient features in the new scheme is that the mandatory granting of personal hearing on request made by the taxpayer, no verification of draft order passed by the appeal unit by other appeal units. See, one of the issues that was raised before the court in the bomb by the Chamber of Tax Consultants was that previously the appeal commissioner's order was supposed to be reviewed by another appeal commissioner, and where he is not in agreement, he can propose a new order, and these would be again referred. If there is a new order proposed, it would go to the third appeal commissioner, who would only have a limited role of choosing either of these orders. He cannot choose ABC from one order or DEF from another order. So that kind of a provision was there in the 2020 scheme, and which was removed by the 2021 scheme. And also the automated examination tool was also removed from the appeal procedure, and the provision of draft appeal order has been removed, and the role of regional faceless appeal center is also removed. Now the appeal unit will only have one appeal commissioner, and the cases will be assigned to him by the National Faceless Appeal Center. And also another feature which is in the 2021 scheme is there is no need to send a recommendation to NFAC to initiate penalty proceedings. The penalty proceedings can be initiated by the same appeal commissioner itself. This would be only in cases where an enhancement is notice has been sent by the appeal commissioner and is enhancing the assessment made. So on an enhancement, the appeal commissioner has got powers to initiate penalty also. So for that, the original scheme had provided that he has to make a recommendation, and the NFAC would only, here the NFAC is the National Faceless Appeal Center, which would decide on the whether the notice for penalty has to be issued or not. Now the commissioner himself has the power to issue both the enhancement notice, and if he decides on the enhancement, to issue the penalty notice as well. And no exemption from paying tax in case of a non-filer of return. So that is removed, because 249(4) is a provision which says that tax on the admitted income has to be paid, and if that is not paid, the appeal itself is liable for dismissal by the appeal commissioner, or where the appeal commissioner is of the opinion that the assessee has made out a case for the good reason, or he makes out a good reasoning, he can exempt from the clause of non-payment of the admitted taxes. This provision for relating to non-filers has been, if somebody has not filed a return in response to 142(1) or 148, and then the assessment is completed and the assessee files an appeal, in those cases, the power to grant exemption from paying tax has been removed from the powers of the commissioner. Then the orders passed are to be digitally signed, and the National E-Assessment Center's name was also renamed as Faceless Assessment Center, so which is not actually very relevant to this appeal scheme. Then all appeal orders with effect from 25th September 2020 is only being passed by the National Faceless Appeal Center, and this entire Faceless Appeal Center is handling only income tax appeals. Therefore, the appeals which are under the Wealth Tax Act or Interest Tax Act, Equalization Levy, and the Security Transaction Tax or Commodity Transaction Tax or the Erstwhile Gift Tax Act, because some of the Wealth Tax Act appeals or the Gift Tax Act appeals are getting remitted back from the high courts and tribunals to be redone. So in case those cases have an issue, again, those are assigned to a commissioner who is out of the faceless scheme. These are still having a physical hearing and not the faceless. And also the Black Money Act is also not covered by this. And search and seizure and international tax, I had already stated that these are also not covered under the faceless scheme. So all appeals which are instituted after 29/12/2021, other than central and international taxes, shall be completed. And these appeals are under section 246A or 248. 248 is a very special section where it applies to a person who actually, it applies to a case where TDS under 195 is to be borne by the taxpayer in India for any foreign remittance, basically. And the agreement with the service provider outside India says that the amount is payable net of tax. So the grossing up has to happen, and if the taxpayer is required to pay the tax, and if the taxpayer says no tax is required to be deducted based on the double taxation treaties or based on judicial pronouncements on this, so he is eligible to make an appeal under section 248. So these are the two sections, 246A and 248, with the exclusion of the appeals that are to be filed under the central charges and international taxes charges arising out of these two charges. So these are the basic appeals that are handled by the National Faceless Appeal Center. And this is the flow chart. So the total control is with the National Faceless Appeal Center, which has got appeal units. And the appeal commissioners are called commissioner appeals. They give the designation unit with the number along with that, depending on number of appeal commissioners in that station. And the functions of the appeal units is that they can admit additional grounds of appeal wherever made by the taxpayer, and they can order any inquiry to be carried out. They can also direct NFAC or AO to make further inquiry. They can also seek information clarification on the admitted grounds of appeal. They can also provide opportunity of being heard to the appellant, analysis of the materials furnished by the appellant, and other functions. Other functions can also be giving an enhancement notice, which are all covered under the powers of the commissioner under 251 of the Act. As you all are aware, the time limit has not changed under the scheme. So it still is within 30 days from the receipt of the order. And the commissioner has got powers to condone the delay on an application made where an appeal is made beyond the 30 days time. So the Faceless Appeal Commissioner is also having the powers, because the powers of the commissioner under 251 has not been changed under the scheme, because the scheme is only putting into effect what are all the powers, but only removing the interface of the physical interface between the taxpayer and the appeal commissioner, or the taxpayer's representative and the appeal commissioner. So in the case of delay, the appeal has to be filed with the condemnation petition, and the Commissioner of Appeals may admit an appeal after the expiry of the period if he is satisfied for the reason given by the taxpayer for the delay. And there are various High Court decisions on the condemnation of delay and also of various tribunals that it should be viewed broadly, and this power should be exercised liberally. However, the Supreme Court also has held that every day of delay needs to be explained. So the condemnation petition has to be filed, in my view, along with the appeal when you file the appeal through the portal. I'll come to how the appeal is to be filed in the portal and take you through that in the subsequent of the presentation. So this is the decision, Master Katiji and others, reported in 167 ITR 471. That is the Supreme Court decision, which says the delay has to be explained in a very detailed manner, every day of delay. And some of the delays is illustrated, but these are all under the old, the physical scheme, where a wrong advice was given to the appellant that appeal need not be filed, or delays due to the mistake of the assessing officer that the delay was with the tribunal instead of the commissioner. All these are all old decisions, or having conflicting legal advices, or the representative is ill, or the assessee himself was ill or not available in the country, or he was pursuing alternate remedy of a rectification proceeding, or had filed a writ petition before the High Court, and the High Court directed him to go before the CIT appeals. All these kind of reasons can be there and differs from case to case. So whatever the reason is, the reasons have to be properly explained in the condemnation petition and uploaded along with the appeal memorandum. So the other important provision is 249(4), where I had already explained that the assessee should have paid the tax which he had determined as per the income returned by him. So if the assessee has not filed a return, then the taxpayer should pay the tax, undisputed tax. That is what is called equal to the amount of advance tax payable by him, which means that whatever income he is not disputing, whatever advance tax he was liable to pay, that he should have paid. However, on an application by the taxpayer, the commissioner, as I said, can exempt, but this power has been removed for non-filers. So since I think we are all used to filing the appeals in the electronic mode for quite some time, I'll just take you through these drop-down menus and what requires to be filled up. So wherever you require to file an appeal, you will have to choose form number 35 against the file income tax forms. And upon choosing, this form would appear, and you click file now, the form would appear, and once you do that, it will also say let's get started, and this is how it would appear. So appeal file appeal for an order with DIN, because from 2019 October onwards, every notice and order contains the document identification number, and that requires to be filled up in this box. So as soon as you do this, because this document identification number is the key that is to go through this entire e-filing of appeals. If you don't have, then file appeal for an order without a DIN. I would not suggest that for any of the cases after 1st October, there would be a DIN automatically which has to be filed. Only in cases if it is before 1st October, then you should choose this option. Then the section, there's a drop down of all the sections which are listed under section 246A and 248. So date of order and if it is 248, date of service of the order, all these have to be filled up. And the basic information of the assessee, order appealed against, all these. So for statement of facts and grounds of appeal, you will have to, I would suggest that you make attachments rather than filling it up in the drop down menu itself, because the space may not be sufficient. You can have it as attachments. And additional evidence. This is an important aspect in the appellate proceedings. For this, reference has to be made to Rule 46A of the income tax rules. Wherever an additional evidence is filed, it should be accompanied with a petition requesting the appeal commissioner to admit the additional evidence, because this was not, and also state why this was not presented before the assessing officer. What was the circumstances as to why it was not submitted? So unless this is made, the additional evidence, admittance of additional evidence would be in question. And wherever additional evidence is made, the appeal commissioner is duty bound to send it to the assessing officer for his comments on both admissibility of the additional evidence and on the issues that are detailed in the additional evidence on the acceptability of the additional evidence on facts. So these are the two things which would happen as soon as you make an application for additional evidence. And the form of verification is all of you be aware of that. And this is the basic information that needs to be filled up. One more important aspect is the email address. This email address is, again, as I said yesterday, this is a key for all communications before the Faceless Appeal Commissioner, and because all your communication would come to this email address. And for each of the forms, you will have to save and proceed further. And as soon as you fill up all these details, then the appeal fee of depending on what the whether it is a penalty case, if the appeal fee is about 250, or if it is for an assessment, maximum it can go up to 1,000 rupees. So various categories are there for the fees. The fees has to be paid and uploaded. And this is the box I was saying, because it gives you a limit of 10,000 characters. So it is better to file an attachment. And here you can give the list of documentary evidences that are required. And any additional evidence, as I had said, under Rule 46A, you make an, if you click yes, then you will have to also attach the documentary evidence and also make the petition. In the grounds of appeal, then again, the grounds of appeal also can be made as an attachment. And this is, if there is a delay, then you also attach the petition for condemnation. So these are all the various attachments, options that are given. And each size of each attachment should not exceed 5 MB, and the total cannot exceed 50 MB. So the attachments should be in PDF or zip, and the zip file should also contain only PDF format. So what is required is, you cannot upload a Word file on an Excel file. You should convert that into a PDF and then upload it. So this is one of the further requirements for filing the appeal. And this is a verification column which needs to be filled up. And there's an auto generation of the acknowledgement. So this is the fee structure for filing appeals, where the assessed income is less than 1 lakh, it is 250. If it is less than 2 lakhs, it's 500. And if the assessed income is between 2 lakhs, above 2 lakhs, it is 1,000 rupees. So irrespective of this. And if it is any other subject like penalties or fee 234E kind of cases, it is 250. So this is the fee structure that needs to be paid for filing the appeal. And also the authorization also needs to be filed if it is filed through the authorized representative, or the appeal is going to be handled by the authorized representative. So these are the this is the overview of the whole scheme. That the first point is the case, the appeal case will be assigned to an appeal unit for disposal. This is the first point. So it will come to one appeal commissioner. The second point is the appeal commissioner would issue notice to the appellant through the National Faceless Appeal Center, calling for submissions. Now you would have seen in most of the cases, you get a email or a notification saying that the portal is enabled for you to make submissions. This is only a new feature that is added in the new scheme, because under the old scheme, unless the appeal commissioner sends you a notice of hearing requiring you to make submissions, you cannot upload the submissions. Now the portal itself enables you in most of the cases where you get a notification that the wherever the case is assigned to an appeal commissioner, automatically the submission is enabled, and you can make your submissions even without waiting for a hearing notice. I will take you through what is the additional requirements that needs to be done whenever the hearing notice is issued in the later part of my presentation. Then the third point is, as soon as the appeal commissioner sends the notice to the Faceless Appeal Center, the appeal center would forward the notice through it to the appellant, and the Faceless Appeal Center also sends the notice to the Faceless Assessment Center on various aspects of the grounds or additional evidence or condemnation that is raised in the appeal. So these are the two activities that are done simultaneously. One, the appellant gets the notice, and this information also is forwarded to the assessment unit, which had completed the assessment. Next, the assessing unit also, assessment unit also, they forward their response. And the assessee also is required to file his submissions on the grounds. And also, if any additional ground is also raised, this is, or additional evidence is raised, this is one of the last opportunities where you can make your additional grounds or additional evidence to the upload the response on those two aspects as well, apart from making submissions to the notice. Then this is forwarded back to the appeal unit, and on going through your submissions and various aspects in the quality of the evidence or the additional grounds, the appeal commissioner may send it to the AO through the National Faceless Assessment Center or to the assessment unit through the National Faceless Appeal Center. So this is one of the functions for getting any response on the points raised by the appellant in the submissions made. Then the appeal commissioner also has powers of enhancement of assessment or reduction of refund. For that, he has to specifically issue a show cause notice through the National Faceless Appeal Center and consider the response received from the appellant. On the aspect of enhancement, there are a few points which are very relevant, that the enhancement cannot be made on a issue which was not looked into by the assessing officer or the assessing unit, as the case may be. So the enhancement should be only on the issues that are considered by the assessing officer and the materials that were considered by him, if the appeal commissioner feels that there is a case for enhancement of the assessment or reduction of the refund. So the two aspects is, he can make an enhancement only after issuing a show cause notice, and also on the issues that are considered by the assessing officer, because the 263 powers of the commissioner would come into play on the issues that were not considered by the assessing unit. So where there's a lack of inquiry, the powers of 263 would come into play, and it would come in clash with the powers of the commissioner. That is why his powers are restricted to only the aspects that have been considered by the assessment unit and not on any fresh source of income. Secondly, he should consider not only the show cause notice, he should also consider the response, and no enhancement can be made without a show cause notice. So after going through all this process, the wherever there is an admission of additional ground, I had earlier stated, he should send it to the assessing officer directly or through the assessment unit, get the comments, and if he is satisfied that the omission of raising the ground was not willful or not unreasonable, then he can admit that ground. Or if there is an objection raised by the assessing officer, because there is a very specific condition under Rule 46A that you should prove, as there are 4 points that you should prove as to why you were restrained or why you could not file it when the assessment proceedings were going on, because that is a very important aspect. It can be admitted only if you make out a case for additional evidence, because the four situations that are there in the rules is that where the assessing officer has refused to admit evidence which ought to have been admitted. Secondly, is where the appellant has been prevented by sufficient cause from producing the evidence which he was called upon by the assessing officer to produce before him. Say, for example, you are not able to get a confirmation letter from a creditor when the assessment proceedings was going on, and you are able to get it subsequent to the passing of the assessment order, and the confirmation is available now. So you will have to make out a case why it was not being able to be furnished before the assessing officer, and pray for admitting the additional evidence. The third aspect is where the appellant was prevented by sufficient cause, any evidence which is relevant to any grounds of appeal. So this is again this is an open what do you call clause. The earlier one was the assessing officer had asked you to provide the confirmation which you could not provide. Here it's where a case where if the assessing officer had asked you for some more further evidence and you could have filed it before the assessing officer, and which the assessing officer did not ask. That is the difference between these two clauses. And the last clause is that where the assessing officer had made the order appealed against without giving sufficient opportunity. So there are the three categories is that where the assessing officer had asked, and wherever I am using the word assessing officer, it would be the faceless assessment unit, and it is only the cases before 2019 which was in the physical mode, wherever the assessing officer were available in physical form. So where you are not able to provide the information called for by the assessing officer, where you could have given this information had the assessing officer called, or three, where the assessing officer did not give you enough time to file the evidence. These are the three, and the fourth one is where the assessing officer refused to admit the evidence. So these are the four cases. Because the scope is quite limited, there can be an opposition from the faceless assessment unit on the admitting the additional ground. So this is one of the aspects. And if you have an additional ground that is made or an additional evidence that is made, these two are more or less similar, though an additional ground is what you missed out to make in the appeal memorandum. Additional evidence is what you did not file before the assessing officer. These two, the commissioner is duty bound to admit it if you make out a case as to what prevented you from not making it in time before the assessing officer or in your appeal memorandum. So this is one of the aspects which you should insist not only in your submissions that is being made electronically, but also whenever you are granted video conferencing, you should also insist on what the decision of the Commissioner appeals is on the admittance of the additional ground or the additional evidence. So as I had stated, this is for the additional ground. And similarly for additional evidence, again, he should ask for a report on the admissibility. As I said, more or less, it would be similar to whatever that is for additional ground, but only the additional evidence, you got a rule 46A, which limits the scope of various probabilities on where you can make the additional evidence. Rule 46A also has subsection sub-rule 2. It says if the appeal commissioner asks for a further evidence to support your claim, then it would not be treated as additional evidence in as per sub-rule 1, where you have the limitation of 4 clauses. So the distinction is if the appeal commissioner requires you to furnish either in the notice given or in the video conferencing granted, then that would not come under the rigors of the four clauses under Rule 46A. So this is the main distinction for the admittance of additional evidence, because one of the usual ground that is taken by the assessing officers before the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal is the assessee had filed additional evidence in the appellate proceedings, and the assessing officer was not granted an opportunity to express his views because it was not forwarded by the appellate commissioner to him for his views on the admissibility and on the merits of the issue. So this is a usual ground that has been going on during the times of the physical appeal. Now, the faceless appeal scheme has clearly codified as to what is to be done whenever an additional evidence is filed. So the additional evidence can be filed in two stages, either when you make your appeal memorandum or when the portal enables you to make your submissions and upload the submissions. So if you don't avail these, the additional ground or additional evidence being uploaded in these two stages, no, in the first stage, you don't require an additional ground, additional evidence alone. In the second stage, additional ground and additional evidence. So you would miss out on the grounds in toto in the appeal. And if it is raised for the first time before the ITIT, then there are various limitations on its admittance and the consequent relief sought. So there is also a rectification proceedings that has been enabled for faceless appeal. So wherever there is a rectification requirement, the appellant or the AO or the Commissioner of Appeals himself can make an can upload the rectification petition. If it is done by the AO or the appellant, it would become a rectification petition. If the Commissioner decides to do the rectification, it becomes a suo motu rectification. So this has to be done through the National Appeal Center, and it gets allotted to the Appeal Commissioner, and then the notice of opportunity of being heard is sent. The parties sent to the other party. If the assessing officer makes the rectification petition, then it is sent to the appellant. If the appellant makes the rectification petition, it is sent to the assessing officer. And this is also done through the National Faceless Assessment Center for the assessing officer, and appellant through the portal directly. Then after getting the response in this regard, again the response is forwarded to the Commissioner Appeals through the National Faceless Appeal Center, and the Appeal Commissioner passes an order either rectifying the mistake or rejecting the mistake, and the same is communicated to the National Appeal Center, and it gets communicated to both the parties. So this is also enabled for rectification of the orders passed by the Commissioner Appeals in the faceless scheme, and also wherever penalty is initiated for either non-compliance of any notice or any enhancement that is proposed by the Appeal Commissioner, then a show cause notice for initiating penalty should be sent through the National Appeal Center to the appellant, and also to the AO, because finally the demand notice has to be raised by the AO. So on receiving the reply through the national, because the interface for all the proceedings is the National Faceless Appeal Center, through which both the parties would correspond between each other. And after considering the reply, he may either pass an order, penalty order, which has to be digitally signed, and forward the same to the National Faceless Appeal Center, and it gets communicated to the appellant or the assessing officer directly, or through the National Faceless Appeal, the assessment center, or he can either for reasons recorded in writing, drop the penalty, and that also has to be communicated to the parties, both the appellant and the assessing officer. So,
Sir,
this is,
sorry to disturb you, sir. One
Yes.
member is asking to elaborate 41st slide.
41. No?
further.
Okay. Sir, this is on the additional evidence that is being filed in accordance with Rule 46A of the Income Tax Rules. So what happens is, as I said, there are 4 situations where additional evidence is permitted to be filed by the taxpayer in the appellate proceedings. The 4 situations are where 1, the assessing officer has refused to admit any evidence in the assessment proceedings. Second is where the assessing officer required you to produce some evidence and you could not produce it in the assessment proceedings, for which you will have to state the reason why you could not file it before the assessing officer. The third one is where you were prevented from sufficient cause from producing the evidence before the assessing officer, which is relevant to any grounds of appeal. So this distinction is, for first one, it is the assessing officer has refused to admit the evidence and decided against you. Second one, he called for the evidence and you could not produce it within the time. The third one is where, if required by the assessing officer, you could have produced this and it supports your grounds of appeal. And the fourth one is the assessing officer did not give you enough time. So these are the 4 situations under which you can file a petition along with the additional evidence for its admittance to the Faceless Appeal Commissioner. And when this is made, this can be made in 2 points of time. One is while filing your appeal. In the appeal memorandum or this drop-down menu itself, you have an option of what is the additional evidence that is being filed. So when you click that menu, you have to attach the additional evidence documents along with the petition as to which clause you come under in Rule 46A1. Because Rule 46A2, I will take that separately because that is not regarded as additional evidence. This has to be done either while filing your appeal or when you are enabled to file your submissions or when you receive the notice for making your submissions. So if you miss out of filing your additional evidence at any of these points, then it becomes a very difficult task for you to take this additional evidence and convince the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal for its admittance, because you will have to also establish the reasonable cause as to why you did not file before the assessing officer and also before the appellate commissioner. So that becomes a difficult task. So whatever additional evidence is there at the earliest point of time, either when you file your appeal or when you get the hearing notice or when the portal enables you to file submissions, you'll have to make. So what happens after you make this petition for additional evidence along with the evidence? The appeal commissioner, the entire thing is received by your appeal commissioner, and he, through the National Faceless Appeal Center, will forward it to the assessing officer. The assessing officer has to furnish a report within a time specified and has, through the National Appeal Center, forward the report. He has to forward it to the National Appeal Center, and the National Appeal Center will forward it to the appeal commissioner. So in the report, either he can dispute why the additional evidence should not be admitted, saying that it doesn't come under clause A to D of Rule 46A1, or he can say, I don't have any views on admitting on the admittance of the additional evidence. However, on the evidence, I require to make further inquiries, or whatever that is required, he can make out a case and send a report on that basis to the additional on the additional evidence to the appeal commissioner. So this will be done through the National Appeal Center, and when it is received by the appeal commissioner, he has two choices. One, to take the additional evidence on record, or reject the additional evidence for the reason recorded in writing in the final order passed. There won't be any interim order. The one reason which I had asked, which I had stated is you'll have to ask in the video conferencing whether the additional evidence is admitted or not admitted, has to be ensured in the video conferencing proceedings. So wherever the additional evidence is admitted, this is again forwarded to the assessing officer to make his further report on the merits of the issues. For example, if you are giving a confirmation letter from a creditor and as an additional evidence, and you also make out a case that you could not get it in time from the creditor for it to be submitted, or if the assessing officer had asked for it, I would have submitted all those kind of, whether all those 4 clauses, whichever it falls into. So you make additional evidence, and the assessing officer feels that he requires to cross-verify with the statement of account of the party, then it would be done at this stage after the evidence is admitted. In the initial stage, he would only object to the admissibility. So at this stage, he would make his comments on the merits of the issue. For example, if you are having an addition on account of non-deduction of TDS, and you come under the proviso by filing a form 26A in the appellate proceedings, saying that the other person has offered it for income and paid the taxes thereon by getting a certificate from the chartered accountant of the vendor or the service provider of the taxpayer. This would also become an additional evidence, because if you had not filed it in the assessment proceedings and suffering an addition on this regard. So the assessing officer may require it to be verified or give his report based on whatever he feels on the quality of the evidence. Then when this report is received by the commissioner, he would decide on the merits of the issue. And everything would be routed through the appeal, National Appeal Center only. So whenever he makes this, receives the report from the assessing officer, a copy of that is sent to the taxpayer for his views on or comments on the both stages, on the admissibility as well as on the merits of the additional evidence. So this is, most of the cases, the additions are made for not getting the confirmation or for non-filing or furnishing the 26A. So these kind of cases can be handled through this additional evidence. And finally, if the additional evidence is admitted and the assessing officer also confirms, then the addition may be deleted by the assessing officer. And if the commissioner requires that the taxpayer is required to furnish further evidence, then it would come under Rule 46A2, where it need not be sent to the other person, which is the assessing officer. So if for some issue, the appeal commissioner directs you to give a supporting document in the appeal proceedings, so for that, this that information need not be sent to the assessing officer, and it can be decided by the appeal commissioner himself. Because wherever the appeal commissioner requires you to furnish evidence in support, that is not considered as additional evidence under Rule 46A. So this is the whole scheme of the additional evidence.
Sir, this is Satish, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are very much audible.
Sir, with regard to this only, earlier, when we submit additional evidence, we used to receive a remand report from the jurisdiction assessing officer, sir.
Yes.
And against which we can file rejoinder for commissioner, sir.
Yes.
I mean, is the procedure same in the
Same,
even in the NFAC also, sir?
it is the same, but it is done through the Faceless
Yeah,
appeal center.
but sir, as it's been more than 2 years, sir, till now
I will
we
come to that,
have.
sir. I will come to that because see what has happened is for 1 full year, the appeal commissioners were directed not to dispose any appeals in the Faceless appeals center,
Okay.
only to take on record what are all the pending appeals, because the electronically filed appeals are already on record. There are matters which are still in physical form, which needed to be fully digitized. And also there were matters which were set aside by High Court, Supreme Court and ITAT. So all these were done during that 1 year, digitizing of all the pending appeals. And also those which were cleared by VSV also had to be closed. So they were only concentrating on disposing the VSV matters and not the regular appeals.
Okay.
Had to have a proper housekeeping done on what is the exact number of appeals that are pending in each charge, which was in the physical form earlier, and that getting transferred to the National Faceless Appeal Center. And through a random algorithm, it gets allotted to various commissioner appeals all over the country. So actually, after the new scheme has been notified in 21, they have started disposing of the appeals, and as recently as yesterday, the CBDT had called for a video conferencing of all the appeal commissioners and given them various targets of clearing the pendency. Now the present pendency to be immediately cleared is all appeals filed before 2017. Second, any appeal where the disputed demand is more than 50 crores. And third is small cases where the tax disputed tax is less than 2 lakhs.
So earlier remand reports which were given by the jury,
those are also
that is
part
also
of
will be considered. Am I
that will
right,
be
sir?
considered. That will be considered.
Okay.
So the only thing is, at whatever stage the appeals were in the physical form, gets transferred to this Faceless scheme. It is not that wherever directions have been given for remand reports, and remand reports were not received before it got transferred to this Faceless scheme.
Okay, sir.
Also pursued from the jurisdictional assessing officer.
Okay.
Remand report by the appeal commissioners, because only then the hearings can be posted for disposing the appeal. And whenever the remand report is received, a copy is electronically communicated to the taxpayer for his comments and rejoinder on the remand report. So the scheme operates as it was operating previously. Only thing is the interface is removed and all the communication is done through the National Faceless Appeal Center. So that is the only change which this scheme has got. And the other salient difference is, if the assessments are passed by the Faceless Assessment Center, it would go to that assessing officer. If it was passed by the physical officer prior to the Faceless Assessment scheme coming into force, it would go to the assessing officer for him to file the remand report. So that is the only distinction that is still in practice.
Okay. So as of now, we haven't yet received a remand report in India for the recent appeals. Am I right, sir? For the recent means for the 2-3 years appeals filed. Only 2000 before. Sir.
2-3 years appeals would not even come up for hearing unless it is something like an issue, single issue, 14A, 3615A.
But recently we have been started
all these
issuing
kind of
notices.
appeals are only being disposed.
Yes, sir.
The old appeals are not disposed yet, and the current appeals, again, the appeal commissioners are told not to take up appeals filed in a financial year in the same year itself.
Oh, okay, sir. Sure,
so what happens is, if you file an appeal within this financial year, it can be only taken up in April of the subsequent year. Anytime after April, that is from April. It cannot be taken within this year unless again, there is a process. Unless there is a High Court direction or unless the Chief Commissioner gives it in writing for early disposal of the appeal to the National Faceless Appeal Center. So which are quite rare and exceptional cases. So normal cases for past 2-3 years, I would say only appeals involving this 3615A or 14A with no dividend income or applicability of Rule 8D. All these kind of small appeals were only disposed of, and not the real appeals where you have a requirement of a remand report to be obtained, or where the remand report is already obtained in the physical model which was there earlier. All those are not all taken up, and only from December onwards they have been given targets of disposing 400 appeals per annum, and now that has been again modified to take up appeals filed before 2017 to be disposed of as soon as possible. So the recent appeals are not seen.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And the scheme also, what happens is this, all the appeals are centralized with the National Appeal Center. And as and when an appeal commissioner disposes of one appeal, there will be one appeal again, which will be marked to him. So that is how they maintain the pendency of 400 or 500, as the case may be, to each appeal commissioner. As and when they dispose one more appeal will get allotted to them. So that is the process which is being followed now in this Faceless.
Oh, okay, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Please continue, sir.
Yeah. So this is a comparative table of what was the old traditional scheme and the old Faceless scheme and the present scheme. So the present scheme, as it stated, it is ordered directly by the CIT appeal, and it is not like the appeal units, which was in the old scheme. It is more like the traditional scheme where the appeal commissioner will be a single person to whom the appeal will be allotted. And the regional Faceless appeal center has been removed. So the appeal units are designated by numbers depending on the number of appeal commissioners in that station. So the entire scheme is notified, present scheme is notified by December 21 as a delegated legislation, and replacing all the earlier scheme of 2020. And admission of delayed appeal, opportunity of being heard before dismissal. So this is again the modified by the present scheme, that reasons for acceptance of the condemnation or rejection, as the case may be, will be forming part of the appeal order only. Previously, it was supposed to be intimated as an interim order. So that has been removed, that requirement has been removed, and it will be part of the final order only. And opportunity of being heard before dismissing under 249(4). The traditional approach had, because the commissioner would send a notice in the physical form wherever the admitted taxes are not paid. But in the old scheme, it did not provide an opportunity of being heard, and there is no specific provision in the new scheme for an automatic dismissal on whether an opportunity should be given or it would get automatically dismissed through the Faceless Appeal Commissioner. Then notice of hearing, yes, the notice of hearing is to be issued now. And apart from the notice of hearing, now you have the portal communicating that the submissions can be uploaded, and the portal has enabled you to file submissions even before the notice of hearing. Again, hearing by way of written submissions only is there, followed by an oral hearing by way of video conferencing. The old scheme had a discretionary power with the CCIT in charge of the regional Faceless Appeal Center. Now with the Regional Faceless Appeal Center being dispensed with, and the new scheme making it mandatory only if the appellant requests for it. You are given an oral hearing by way of video conferencing. Under the traditional approach, you could go and meet the commissioner and get the hearing done. Now that is not possible. You may not even know who the appeal commissioner is. And also, in most of the cases, the appeal commissioner is masked. You don't even get to see the face in the present scheme. And virtual hearing is the way of life now. And administrative interference is not there, because in the old scheme, you had a requirement of the orders being finalized by the National Faceless Appeal Center, which removed the independence of the CIT appeals. So that point has been removed in the new scheme, and making the CIT appeals as the sole decision-making authority, and his orders are not going to be reviewed by another CIT appeals. All those things have been removed under the new scheme. And penalty for non-appearance, yes, it can be levied by the appeal commissioner for not making the submissions. But if you request for an adjournment or make out a case as and when you receive a notice for penalty that you are sufficiently prevented from making your submissions in time specified by the hearing notice, then it gives discretionary power to the appeal commissioner to cancel the to not levy the penalty or drop the proceedings. So additional evidence at the instance of department. This is again, as I had explained about Rule 46A, the clear stipulations are there on when an additional evidence can be made and what is the process, which was detailedly explained in my flow chart. Review of order. The old scheme and the new scheme, you don't have a review of order. Sorry, in the traditional scheme, you didn't have a review. And the new scheme also, you don't have a review, which was removed in the new scheme, making the CIT appeals an independent authority. And rectification, as specified, again, a rectification is possible either at the instance of the assessing officer or by the appellant, and which was also detailedly covered in my presentation earlier. And opportunity of being heard before dismissing an application for additional ground or additional evidence. In the traditional approach, you had a opportunity, but in the faceless, you don't have an opportunity of being heard. Only it becomes part of the final order. And whether the commissioner appeals has powers to stay the demand. See, the traditional approach, though it did not say that there is a power to stay the demand, and the powers are with the PCIT to reduce the 20% and grant absolute stay. The new scheme does not talk about the powers of stay. However, various high courts have held that the authority before whom the appeal is presented has the power to stay the demand. So this is, though the scheme has not specifically denied or provided for stay of demand, and under the scheme of things, only on deposit of 20% of the disputed demand, the balance amount gets stayed. And for reducing the 20%, you will have to make an application to the assessing officer, who, based on an order in writing from the PCIT, may reduce it to a lesser amount or nil. But high courts have held that the authority before whom the appeal is presented can grant stay. Again, early hearing again can be done in the present scheme by making an application through the Principal Chief Commissioner, who has to make the application to the National Faceless Appeal Center, and again, it should fall as a high demand appeal for it to be disposed out of turn, because an order in writing has to be passed for taking the appeal out of turn. Or if there is a High Court direction to dispose the appeal within a specific period of time, then the appeal gets disposed within that time. So communication is by way of email or uploading on the portal, followed by a real-time alert. And the same modes are still continuing in the new scheme. And as I had said, this is the decisions where they had said that power to grant stay is there with the CIT appeals. This is again a judge made law based on High Court decisions, and the scheme doesn't provide for this. Next is again on the powers of enhancement, which I had stated that it cannot be on a new source which was not looked into by the by the assessing officer. So the appeal commissioner has powers to enhance or declare the assessment invalid based on the various facts of each case, or confirm or reduce. So this is the same powers which are going to be exercised by the Faceless appeal commissioner. So this is what I had covered in my earlier slides, that where the matter is not considered by the assessing officer or examined by the assessing officer, it is a fit case for 263 and not for an enhancement by the CIT appeals. So wherever he makes, he proposes to make an enhancement, he has to issue a notice in writing and offer afford a reasonable opportunity of being heard. So the new scheme has made the personal hearing through video conferencing a mandatory one, provided if it is requested by the assessee. So whenever you upload the submissions, there is an option granted whether you want video conferencing, and if you select that option, you would be given the video conferencing. And this is also for appeals filed prior to 28/12/21, because it applies to all pending appeals. And this is another important aspect. The jurisdictional High Court decision in which the taxpayer is there is the decision that has to be followed, not the jurisdictional appeal, wherever the jurisdictional appeal commissioner is exercising the powers. So wherever it has to go by the jurisdictional decisions where the assessee is residing. And one more aspect that has come in recent times is there were quite a few appeals that were disposed of on this 36(1)(5)(a). So allowing the appeal of the assessee holding on various High Court decisions, saying that it would get covered under 43B. And after the Supreme Court had decided in checkmate services that 43B would not be applicable and it is covered by 36(1)(5)(a) only, there are quite a bit of rectification petitions that are filed before the Faceless CIT appeals, and these are because the time limit for a rectification before the Faceless CIT appeals is 4 years, and if it is a matter decided within that time limit, then the assessing officers are moving rectification petitions in the Faceless appeal center. So this is one of the recent developments that is happening. And so the basis of that is a subsequent decision of the Supreme Court is only clarificatory in nature, and it is a good reason for rectification. And this has been held by the Madras High Court in Southern Industrial Corporation. So this is the basis for both the assessee or the assessing officer to move a rectification before the CIT appeals, if no further appeals are filed by either of them. So this also can be exercised wherever it is applicable, and this is quite useful if for the assessee if he has chosen not to file a further appeal and it's within the time. And for the department, they are also having the same equal rights of filing a rectification petition wherever Supreme Court has pronounced decisions in the department's favor. So the term assessing officer used under the faceless appeal scheme has no reference to the faceless assessment scheme. However, it would be the faceless assessing officer if the order is passed by the faceless assessing officer, or the jurisdictional assessing officer where the PAN is based. And for any orders that are filed by orders that are passed by the faceless assessment center, the jurisdictional ITAT over the tax officer is the ITAT bench before which the appeal has to be filed. This has been decided by the Supreme Court in the case of ABC Papers Limited, where it said the jurisdiction of the ITAT would be where the orders are passed by the assessing officer. So here it should be deemed where the assessing officer is of the territorial jurisdiction and not the faceless assessment officer. So again, the power of penalty had already covered in the earlier slide. And there are a few points where there is a non-integration of the faceless appeal scheme and assessment scheme. So under the faceless appeal scheme, the appeals National Faceless Appeal Center can directly communicate with the AO and vice versa, whereas the identity of the AO is supposed to be known only to the National Faceless Assessment Center. However, it is not clear how that database would be accessed by the National Appeal Center and the information sent to him. So that is the what we call as a non-integration. But however, the data is available in the income tax department's portal and they can easily access. Other points is that the size of attachments each is only 5 MB and maximum is 50 MB at one point of time. So when there is a large appeal involving various large number of issues, then it restricts the size of the paper book or the written submissions or the supporting evidence that are filed. However, the appeal attachments, they also allow a zip file to be attached. So to a great extent, you can use, zip the file or compress it, and the compressed files only are required to be under PDF format. So you can compress it and upload it. I think over a period of time, this size limitations would be increased, and the prescription of physical hearing where complex issues are there, whether it should be only one hearing or more than one hearing, all those requires to be prescribed, and whether more than one video conferencing hearings can be given is a issue going forward would be addressed by the board. So again, we don't know whether the rectification proceedings, if an application is made by either the assessing officer or the appellant, would go to the same CIT appeals who pass the order, or it would go through the automated system. That is not known. But however, I still believe that it would go to the same appeal commissioner who passed the order, because it is his order that is sought to be rectified. And there is no specific tab where you can file an additional ground. So you'll have to use it as an attachment only. So that also needs to be provided as an additional ground when you make the submissions. So, or it now the practices, it is being made as part of the submissions. So that is another issue that I think would be addressed in the future. And there is no scope of passing an interim order, and it is only a final order that is communicated on the additional ground or additional evidence or on the condemnation. So an opportunity of being heard before the rejection of that is suggested. Hopefully that would get addressed in the future. Again, penalty. It is not a mere enhancement that would automatically lead to a penalty. So though the powers are there for the CIT appeals to levy penalty, because his powers are coterminous with the assessing officer, they have, various courts have outlined the penalty provisions to be equally applicable, what are applicable to the AO to be applicable to the CIT appeals. So an automatic enhancement would not lead to an automatic penalty. And again, these are all aspects that would, I think, would be addressed in the future. So this is all, friends, for the faceless assessment scheme getting, I would say, transformed into a faceless appeal scheme. And going forward, I think even the revisionary powers of the principal commissioner would also go into the faceless modules in the future. Going forward, if I would, I'm seeing that happening quite soon under 263 or 264. So, friends, if you have any queries on this faceless appeal scheme, I am glad to take them. Thank you.
There one query from the chat box. Duplex assessment was completed under section 144. Can I file all the explanation of the documentary evidences which I should? Sorry.
This is a typical case which calls for filing of additional evidence where the assessment is completed under 144. An assessment under 144 can be completed only in two situations: when you don't respond to a notice under 142(1 calling for information, or when no return is filed by the assessee. So I assume where return is filed or no return is filed, or you don't respond to 142(1, you will have to make out a case what forbid you or what prevented you from filing these evidences as and when the information was called for. One of the common aspects which we are seeing in the transition period is that the notices for the faceless assessment have gone either into the spam folder or have gone into the email, which is no longer used by the taxpayer or by the authorized representative, and they miss out on the timely filing of response, and consequently an order of 144 is passed by the assessing officer, and you file an appeal. When you file an appeal, first requirement is to justify or make out a case what prevented from filing the information before the assessing officer. If you can make out a convincing explanation on that and file along with documentary evidence, either while filing the appeal or subsequently, you have a very good case for the consideration of the faceless appeal commissioner on merits. And again, the main reason could also be that an assessee is not benefited by not responding to a notice or suffering an order under 144, an ex parte order, because it is in its interest to if he had known, it would be in his interest to cooperate and file the required information and not suffer a ex parte order. The stay petition also has to be made online along with the appeal memorandum, or whenever the module enables to make submissions, because technically, as per the Act, the powers are only with the assessing officer in consultation with the principal commissioner. So when a stay petition is made, it has to be made only online to the Faceless appeal commissioner.
And
This can be done after the assessing officer rejects the stay, or even without going before the assessing officer. And it can be also filed along with the appeal memorandum or subsequently whenever the portal enables.
this you can unmute yourself and also can speak if you have any doubts, or you can place it in chat box. I think no more queries from the members, sir. And thank you for your excellent deliberation with the detailed PPTs and taking us through various practical examples. And your practical experience would be definitely value added to our members and today's topic and yesterday's topic also. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you for accepting our invitation. And thank you all the members for your patient listening and active participation. And I request you all to attend for tomorrow's flag hosting ceremony at ICI Bhavan, Vijayawada branch. And I request you all to attend for programs to be held on 27th and 28th also. Both topics are very important to us, and both speakers are seasoned speakers and very, very experienced one. We kindly make use of those programs also. Thank you one and all, and signing off for today. Thank you.